I'm gonna try to work on
Yeah, but if I need to,
Can you open up the stream? Just make sure that you can see my screen and stuff like that for me. Cool. All right, everyone. We're about to get started. So one of the things for today that is kind of weird is these pods aren't working. They don't seem to be picking up any connections. We really don't have a whole lot of code that I'm going to be doing, but we do have like a 30, 45-minute review going on beforehand. So if you're interested in watching this review, what I'm going to have you do is actually open my stream with no audio, so then you can see my screen just on your screen. We can follow along that way, and yeah, and so sorry about the TVs. They've really been a pain in the ass this morning. We spent like 25 minutes trying to get them to work. So basically the way today is going to work is we're going to do some review, ask questions if you've got questions. If you want to see anything about databases, about React or whatever, we'll play with that for like, however long we decide is reasonable, right? And then we're going to spend some time working on homework. And then after that, we're going to spend time working on our final project. So we're going to start with that today. So first off, is there anyone who has anything that they would like to review specifically? So first off, are there? Yeah, Kathy. State on React components. Okay, that's a good place to start. Fist of 5? How's everyone feeling on React? 0 to 5. Everyone in the room. I want to see everyone's hand. Okay, so we're getting there. Some people feeling good. Some people still need work. So we're going to do a little bit of React and spend some time doing that. That's a good idea. All right. So hopefully you guys can see my screen. And it's okay there. First things first, we should have created a React app installed. So we're going to do that. We're just going to make one called state app. Do all that fun stuff. Yeah, the other thing about muting the stream, I don't really want to hear myself talk. Just, when you actually hear your voice through recording, it's always way different. You're like, oh, God, really? So, bless all of you for listening to me for so many days. But thankfully, I don't got to listen to me. So, it works out. Anyway, we're just letting Yarn doing its thing. If you want to follow along, great. If you just want to kind of watch what I do, also great. No big deal. Are there any other topics anyone else is really looking to go over today before we start working on homework and stuff? Everyone's probably pretty antsy to get the homework and the projects done, I would assume. No? Okay. Well, we're going to talk about this for a while. So, again, let's cover just the basic folder structure of the Create React app, just so we're familiar. So we have our package JSON, right? And that's going to build a bunch of stuff for us. It's going to inject some scripts, start, build, test, and eject. And so basically, when you want to run this project, you're going to be running the build and then the start. And then you'll automatically get like a little project to open up. I might be able to just run yarn start. I might just run it in developer mode. Yeah, okay. So you run yarn start. This cool thing opens up on your screen. That's a fun little app to play with. React apps are pretty convenient and pretty easy to use. Now inside the source folder is where all the fun is. That's where our React is. Again, the index.js. That's our entry point, right? So we have this React render, which takes our first React component, which in this case is just app, and assigns it to the document element ID of root. Now, where is this element ID of root coming from? Who knows? From the index.html. Where's the index.html? It's in the public folder right here. So this is the index.html they generate for you. It's got a lot of comments. You can go through and read through those if you'd like. There's a bunch of other stuff going on. So there's a manifest JSON, which is to help manage some of the resources of Create React App. To be honest with you, the manifest JSON, I don't know much about. I've never actually used a Create React App in production. But it's a good template for you to get started. So we go to our app component to the root element, which again, XHTML is div ID root. And then app is the first thing that's going to open up. And here's our app. So when talking about state, a good way to play with state is to use like a form. So first things first, we want a default state, right? So let's just have name, and we're going to set it equal to effectively nothing. We'll have age. We'll set it to 0. What's a good ask like a checkbox question? Anyone? Are you fun? We'll set it to false by default. Answer's no. Okay. So let's turn this into a form. We don't care about all this fun stuff. We'll just make a div. We'll give it a label. Number HTML4. We'll call this name. Name. Label. Input. Name. Value equals this dot state dot name. Oops, no comma there. We need to assign one more thing to this. What is the type of this going to be? Remember, is the attribute type on an input in HTML? Text, maybe? Because it's the name? Yeah, that's a good one. All right, we're going to copy this so we can do it quickly. Next one we want is age. Age. The name here is going to be age. What's the type of this going to be? Number? I heard it out there. Nice. And what did we put here instead of this state.name? Dot age. Nice. Last one. I forget if the checkboxes, they render weird. Probably. I think that's what I called it, right? Are you fun? Yeah. Just copy that so I don't mistype something. So this one is going to be, are you fun? The type is going to be what? Checkbox, maybe? Do checked, even. Dot state. Which is going to be, are you fun, right? So this should hopefully render a little crappy form for us. I did something wrong. Might have. There you go. It doesn't look beautiful, right? It's terrible. And it doesn't actually do anything. Does anyone know why? I didn't do anything. Because I don't have a submit button? That's one reason why I won't do anything. What's another reason? Why can't I even change the number? No JavaScript? In what way? There's no code to tell the arrows to function? Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And how do they function? What do we need to add to React specifically to get this value to change? An event handler, and what will that event handler do?
It would handle the clicks of the up and down arrows so that it will know to change the age.
It will know to change the age, exactly right. It's going to change the state of your React component, that age. We have no way to do that at the current moment. So, who remembers how to write this function? What can we call it, first off?
Handle event.
Handle event?
Handle event change.
Handle event changed. Yeah, that is a perfectly acceptable name for it, yeah. Let's go ahead and put that there. So that's going to be E for event, right? Actually, I think this needs to be No, it needs to be equals, right? Call this event. So out of the event, what do we need to do? There's two things we can get out of the event to help us do this pretty easily.
You can get the name of
the name of the control, right? And what else?
the value.
The value. We get it out of the event target. What are we going to do in React specifically? Like so? That's correct. Where do we sign this? What is the name of the attribute in HTML that we're going to be changing? On something, right? On change, maybe? And what about the checkbox? Can we use the same one for the checkbox? Why don't we try? Oops. See what happens. All right, so let's go back to it. Seems to be working now. Uh-oh, that one's not quite working. Good. Now, why isn't the age working, though? Anyone have an idea? Let's go ahead and look at the code. So we have this event change on our checkbox input. What about this clearly wrong or wouldn't work with the checkbox? Any ideas? Do we have value at all in the checkbox? We have checked, right? Yeah. So there's ways we can do this. Handle checked. Handle checkbox changed. We can just know to take the same stuff out. This is a way we can make it reusable so multiple checkboxes could use it. The default handler. Voila. We have the magic of checkboxes, right? Now that's all well and good. Having two functions here is really nice. Is there a better? Maybe we can try and refactor this so it's one function. Does anyone have any ideas of how we could combine these two functions and make it work for any type of checkbox or regular input? Yeah. Okay, hand up. So could you do value or checked? Yeah, you absolutely could do that. Now that might cause issues though. That's like it's a good solution, but you're going to get weird. You might get weird bugs. So we'll see how it works in this simple form. It'd probably be okay. See the event. All right. So oops. We'll go ahead and change this. We'll give React time to re-render. It's probably rendered. Doesn't quite work. It's very, very close though. This will work. Totally does own smoke. But if we also bring in the type, right? Because we know if it's checkbox, it's going to have checked. See what that does. That seems to work. That solves the problem. Then we can get rid of this function right here. Does everyone see kind of where's the type? What is the type? the type of the input, right? All of our HTML inputs have a type attribute that you need to specify, or defaults to text, I believe. And in this case, we have we'll have a text, a number, and a checkbox. But we already know, because we were using the handle event changed before with the number and the text, that they can function the same way with that value. But checkbox is different because you need checked. You can't actually test the value. You might be able to, but there's a potential it won't work properly, and we already found that that's the case, right? It doesn't quite work. But if we just check really quick the type, which comes off of the event target, and make sure it's a checkbox, then we can always use checks. And if it's not a checkbox, well, we're going to default to value. Does anyone know what the event target is and how I knew to do that? What is the event target? It is the HTML element we're attached to. So event comes in when you do an input changed, right? An event has information about the element it came from. And one of them is the target, and that is literally this. We could pull name. We could probably pull the onChange handler out of there and then be extra funky and do all kinds of weird things, right? Because we have a reference to the target, which is that HTML element. If this had typing, are you all familiar with typing? Have you talked about typing at all? You might not have, because we've only been doing JavaScript so far, and we haven't gone into any other languages. But if you had some sort of a typing mechanism, this event would have a type of event, and then this target would be HTML input element, HTML select element, right? So if you had a select with options, whatever other elements it could potentially be. It could be a div even, because you could technically do onChange on a div. It's just kind of weird to do that, or on clicked at least. So that's a way we can combine the two. The real reason why we're doing this, though, is we had the question of, can we go over state a little bit more? So the question is yeah, or the answer is yeah. We're going to go over state a little bit more. And the way I want to kind of show how state is changing is by console logging things. So one way that you can easily debug your application as you're working is to just console log this.state, right? To console log this.state, you'll be able to see things change. So we have our first render, and it comes in as an object. Age is 0, are you fun, false, name is nothing. And that's our default state, right? That's what we set as the default state up at the top of that component. And just to re-verify, I go up here, state equals name, age, are you fun, right? Looks the same. I go ahead and click this. Wow, something has changed. Remember, we're rendering this, we're console logging the state every time we re-render, and in React, every time you do set state, you cause a re-render. So the app re-renders with the check in the checkbox, and are you fun, which is mapped to that checkbox, is set to true. Make sense? Kind of, you can see how state is changing. You can see my age is incrementing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I start going down. It's going down. You can see how state is changing. This is a really great mechanism for understanding what causes a re-render in React, because as you get more advanced with React and you have to build large applications, you really, really need to know what is going to cause your app to render. You can get infinite render loops. You can get multiple re-renders when you only need one re-render, and then it causes your app to slow down and not be as good. So just doing this when you're setting up a component anyway, even if you know exactly how state works, is good, because then you can see what's causing a re-render, right? So we'll go ahead and change this here. It's kind of cool, right? You can see exactly what's changing in the state. And it's pretty easy to see that. Any questions on what we've done right here? What specifically would you like me to dive into a little bit deeper? Okay. We can work with you when we get to the homework and stuff. If there's more granular questions you want to ask. Yeah, and it's hard to just kind of pick it up on the fly, even if you're getting an example, because there's a lot going on here. I made the assumption when I set this example that you guys understood the basics of these components, right, and how we build these components. And I built a little form, and that's all well and good, but you may not totally understand how the component comes together, and so there's still some mystery happening here, right? So does anyone want me to extend this example in any way to kind of clarify something for you? Is there any other questions about what we've done here specifically? You have something?
No, I just have a different.
What is it? Go for it.
Models and how they interact with the ground.
Models and how they interact, like mongoose models. Yeah, sure, we can do that. Okay, so that's kind of a different task. So we're going to go ahead and shut down this Create React app. If anyone wants me to go over that again, we totally can. So let's go ahead and make their model. We'll go into model. We're going to do yarn init, which is going to start a new project for us. Okay, and let's go ahead and open that up. First thing first, before we do anything, we want to do a git ignore. And you want to ignore node modules. Now I know this isn't necessarily a Git repo yet. We'll go ahead and do that. Open up your terminal. Now you have a Git repo. Okay, so you start a new package. You want to do git init. You want to create a basic git ignore. Those are just like things you definitely want to do house cleaning when you're starting a new package. So let's go ahead and do server.js. There's a few things we need. Go back to my terminal. Yarn add express. Mongoose. That might be all we need. We'll see. Okay. Go ahead and require express in. What's up? So that's a we can go over one of the examples again if you like, and I can skip the setup part, but the models themselves don't actually have anything to do with React. What they are is they're on the server here, and they are helping us get to Mongoose, right? And then that data is queried from your Mongo database, and that's returned to React through an API call. So why don't I just go ahead and open up one of the examples, because I still have some here. Let's go to this router one, because I know that this is that React router example we did Thursday, last thing in class, Wednesday. Hopefully you guys got to it. So let's go ahead and open it up. Remember, we have a client folder which has all that crazy create React app stuff, and a little bit of others, because this is a little more advanced project, right? That we just went over. So this is a good one. It's a little bit more in depth because we can go over some more React components as well. But anyway, we have a server.js. And this is kind of the direction I was going, where you have Express, you have Mongoose. Mongoose goes ahead and it connects to your Mongo database, right? In this case, it's React reading list. And then we just instantiate Express. So we're like, hey, go ahead, Express. Start listening on port 3001. Port in as an environment variable. And then we have these routes. And so the models start to come into play in these routes, okay? So if we remember from just our basic Express, we have some JSON endpoints that are going to be serving JSON to us, and they come from these routes. Go ahead and look at the routes. Right here, the routes index.js, all this is an aggregate of all the potential routes we have in the app. We have this basic router we're creating through Express. We have the API routes, which are the JSON routes, and then we have the everything else routes, which sends out our HTML that we have from our Create React app in that client folder. So you can see client, whoops, build, because it's going to create a build folder when you do yarn build, and then the index HTML that's copied to that build folder. If we dive a little deeper, we go into our API. Again, they have another layer of collection of the routes, right? So it's just /books on the API is going to go to the book routes. So it's a little bit more indirection, but that's okay. This is good organization. It's hard to see the organization right now because we only have one set of routes, which are the books. But imagine you had 50 sets of routes. You kind of want that index.js there so you don't have to require 50 files into every other file when you're trying to put stuff together. And that's possible. We have some APIs that work that maybe not 50, but have probably 30-something different resource endpoints. And if you count all of our services, it's probably somewhere in the 50s. So the router has a shorthand syntax, right? Which we've been using a lot in this class, but sometimes isn't necessarily used in production, but it's nice to see it, which allows us to go to this controller and automatically inject controller functions into the route. So basically this is saying for everything with this the slash. So this would be localhost 3001 /API /books /, and then you do a GET request. It's going to go ahead and trigger this books controller find all. If you do a post request to localhost 3001 /API /books, you're going to do a create. Now there's also the ID. Does anyone remember what this :ID means? What was that? And what it's pretty much any arbitrary string / anything. It could be a bunch of, we pull it out to the rec.params object in Express, and we can pull it out as ID. That's like the parameter name, ID. So same thing here. There's a get at the 2001 /API /books /arbitrary identifier. If you do a get to that, it's going to go ahead and try to find by that ID, put, delete, all of those things. So this is just a nice, quick shorthand syntax for assigning routes. And we're using a controller kind of design pattern here to facilitate those routes. Bless you. So realistically, those routes, you could do them one by one if you wanted in the router, the actual router file. But we're using a controller to kind of be cleaner, separate concerns a little bit. If it's a good pattern, I don't know. It's kind of up to you. So you can see in here the find all is that slash, right? Get at just the slash books with nothing else. We do the find all, which is right here. I'm going to go ahead and close some of these. I'm going to open these up side by side. Kind of see them together, right? So localhost 3001 /API /books get request goes to here. We open up our model, which is going to be coming from Mongoose, and it's just going to be hitting the books model off of the Mongo database. It runs a query, which we're directly pulling in the query from the request. So that means there's going to be a question mark, whatever. It's going to be like your query string and your URL, and we're just translating that to a direct query in Mongoose, which, for better or for worse, something you can do, right? So right here we're sorting by date -1, which means we want the most recent date, I believe. And then we have the DB model comes back from Mongoose in our promise, and we're just turning it into a JSON blob and sending it over the response. And then if we go on, we'll send a 422. Does anyone know what 422 is? 422 is like cannot process. I forget exactly what it stands for. It basically means there's a validation error. Right? Something bad happened. Now 400 is bad requests. And you typically use a 400 when it's like whatever you asked for, you just did it wrong. This one is saying there was an error when we got the stuff you asked for. The different status codes are important to know the distinction because they mean a lot to the developers consuming your API. So let's go ahead and dive a little deeper into the model itself. Oops. Go to models. In our index, it just directly exports the book. So why don't we just go to the book model? Again, the book, it's a real basic schema, title, author, synopsis, date. We do a Mongoose model. Go ahead and create it. It's going to be called .book. That's why we have db.book with a capital B, because we're specifying it right here like that. And then we just export it. Not a whole lot going on there, but there's a lot of indirection in how all this stuff is put together. So it makes it kind of hard to follow, especially when you're new to this stuff, right? It's like, well, what exactly is going on? So before we run this, let's go ahead and look at the client side of things. We'll go to our books page. Books. This is going to go ahead and load books, right? It runs api.getBooks. So let's go to utils API. API getBooks does nothing special. It just literally makes a GET request through Axios to /API/books, which again is going to end up right here, right? We already said localhost 3001 /API/books. Generic GET request is going to end up here. So can anyone tell me, just by looking at this, without even running it, We make this call with Axios. What is this rec.query going to be? Any idea? Literally nothing. This is going to be literally nothing. It's kind of interesting, right? It's just empty. Emptiness. Empty object, and that finds everything. That's how Mongoose in this instance, knows how to find everything for Mongo. You just give it an empty query, like find whatever, you know. Sounds good. It'll bring you back a whole bunch of stuff. Now here's the getBook ID. It just appends the ID, right, to that /books. You go back to the book controller, find by ID, find by ID. We're literally just passing the ID into that find by ID. Because that's all find by ID's method signature requires, is the ID in string format. Or the ID in its proper format, but in this case it's a string. Then it does the same thing. Turns it into a JSON blob and returns it. So let's go ahead and look at, let's go ahead and try to run this actually. The yarn start just takes care of it. Open this bad boy up. Should have some of my data left over from the other day. Yeah, see, I deleted everything Thursday, but we can add it together. So let's create a new book. Test, a bunch of fun stuff. New book, and test by test comes on in. You can click this, go to the details. Here's the details by ID. So if we look at our React router, we have a /books ID. That ID looks very similar to the API, right? Here's your URL in full force. This is what it actually looks like. And it loads up our book. How does it do that? Look at the detail component. As soon as you get to this page and component did mount fires, when is component did mount fire? Who can tell me? What was that? When the page is done loading after the first what? The first render. After your first component render, component did mount, goes ahead and fires. It says the component's here, it's good. It only fires one time until your component unmounts. So again, with the router, it injects that ID as this .params object. So this looks a lot like Express, right? Imagine this was just rec. Now it's effectively Express. It's the exact same kind of structure. We pull it in from that URL. We're going to set the state after we get back from the API that book to our new book. That's going to trigger a new render because remember we called set state. So things change. It causes a re-render. And then we can take the properties off that book and display them here on this page. So what we can do, to kind of see what's going on, let's go ahead and console log state. Details rendered. Right? We can do console log there. Let's go to API. Console.log looking for the ID, and then we'll do ID. Let me go ahead and shut this stuff down. Let's go to the books controller. This is going to find by ID, console.log, finding ID, rec.params.id. Restart all this, see what we can see. We can kind of trace this going down through the services, okay? So we'll go ahead and open this. I have test by test, boom. Rendering book, nothing. So remember I said component did mount happens after the first render, and this is how you can verify it. Every time we run that render routine, we're console logging the state, right? It comes in as nothing. Our default state in that detail component is nothing. It's a book. We verified it. Component did mount happens, and we've got ourselves this ID, right? Now, if we look at our console, finding ID of this, we look at our books controller, finding ID. What is this ID? Oops, I just shut it down. This. Look, they match. So you can kind of trace exactly how it's going. So to answer your question of how do the models work with React, they don't really work with React directly. They're working with Mongoose. And Mongoose is somehow queried through Express, through the router endpoints, right? And React is calling those. So it's like 3 layers of indirection, and that's how most websites work. They have some sort of front end. They have that server, and then that server is used to get data. Now, the modern web is changing. It's looking more like this, where your front end is its own server. So if you were to deploy this live to production, say you work at a company and they say, we need a React app, you would have literally a server to deploy your React app, okay, the front end. You'd have a server to deploy your Express app, and then you'd probably have a server to hold your Mongo database. It'd be a totally different server. You'd have 3 servers there. Or potentially just 3 services on one server. You could also do that. But imagine you put them on different servers because you want them to be resilient, or you want them in different parts of the country for whatever reason, for disaster recovery or all that fun stuff. Traditional websites, the way they used to work, is kind of like how we did the handlebar stuff, where you'd have one server. When you make a request to that server, the server takes the data it needs, turns it into an HTML file, right, using those HTML templates, and then just sends back the HTML. Okay? And that's well and good. But it's not nearly as fluid and doesn't feel as fun as like React or a single page application, right? So there's a small distinction there. You have, instead of having all 3, the React app, the Express service, and the Mongo service as different services, in that case, you'd only have 2, the Express service and the Mongo service. You don't need a React service because the Express service is actually giving you the HTML. Are there any questions on this? I know we didn't get to go into anything super in-depth, but we kind of went over it again. So anything else I can answer? We got 5 more minutes or so to just kind of review before we start the homework. Or not, if no one has anything else they'd like to talk about, we can just start the homework. No? Okay, Fist of 5 on React, Express, the whole MERN stack. It's kind of, let's start with React. Fist 5 on React. I want to see how people are feeling on React. 1 through 5, 0 through 5. 0? You were a 1 earlier, Kathy. Did I really confuse it that much for you? Okay, all right. So we still need a little work on React. That's fine. We'll work with you. The TAs will work with you. I'll work with you while we have plenty of time today. Fist of 5 on Express. How are we feeling about Express? If I said go an Express service, don't care about React, don't care about Mongo, make an Express service that returns a blob of data. How could we do that? Fist of 5. How are we feeling? Getting there? A little better than React, maybe? Okay, that's good. That's good. Fist of 5 on Mongo. If I said start a MongoDB and put some stuff in there just through the Mongo console, who could do that? Maybe about the same as Express, right? That's good. So we're all making headway, and that's good. Seeing 3s, 4s, 5s for all of those, that's great. If you can do a 3, 4, 5 for all 3 of those, you're in the money for this final project. If you feel like you're below that on any of them, that's where you should consult myself, the TAs, the tutor, whatever you need to do for these last few weeks to make that information more concrete. If you're 3 or above on all 3 of those, you're ready for this final project to dive in and just get going, because you'll get the other 1 or 2 points from the project. Cool. So why don't we talk about the project a little bit? Actually, no. You guys are going to have about 30, 40 minutes to work on homework. We're going to do that first. TAs, did you have anything you wanted to say before they started the homework? So, go ahead.
Yeah. Just a reminder that in order to complete this and get a certificate, you have to have you can miss 2 homework assignments, essentially. So if you have 90% of your homework complete, if you miss more than 2 homework assignments, then you do not get a certificate. So if you need help getting some stuff completed, that's what we're here for. We're happy to help you. Empty repositories do not count as a submitted homework assignment. Good. An empty repository?
If you submitted an empty repository, you just create the repo, there's no code in it, and you slack that link out, or you put that link on your bootcamp spot, you're not going to get credit for that assignment.
So when you say 90% of the homework, you mean
Just the stuff for us, not the career services. That's all the thing over here.
No,
Yeah,
that's
not
what,
the career stuff.
yeah, that's what Cynthia just asks. That's a separate thing. If you don't do the career services homework assignments, you're just not gonna get help from career services, up to and after you graduate. And it is really helpful, but you can get your certificate without the career services fund. So that's on you whether you decide to utilize that or not. But for all of your tech homework, all the required homework, you need to submit at very least, all but 2 of them. So if you're any further behind on that, please come see your instructor, your TAs.
Or if
Let
there's
us help
stuff,
you.
yeah, if there's stuff that you did complete, but you're still thinking on and you need us to look at it with you, or you have to.
All I ask is do a brief summary of that in the Slack channel for the streamers, please. So streamers can get what we talked about. The gist of it is do your homework. 2, there's a homework due today and then one other one, right?
Yeah.
So you have two homeworks to work on today. If you're done with the one that's due today, great. And there's one other one that has to be done. And you can probably get that somewhat done in 30 minutes as well. So we're going to go until about 11:15-ish. And you're going to work on that. And then we're going to talk about our final projects.
One more thing. Monday, Wednesday, people, I did not catch you as you were coming in. You guys need to pick your project groups today, right now, because you're going to start working on project stuff. And once you have your groups figured out, Slack them over to me and Abby so we know who is doing what. Maximum 4 people per group.
Streamers, I'm going to cancel the stream now at 11:15. I'm going to start another stream. We're going to go over the final project a bit, and then that'll be the last stream for today. So watch out for my Slack in about 30 to 45 minutes, or 30 to 35 minutes or so for the next set of the stream to go over that, the final project. Otherwise, work on your homework, ask questions on Slack, and do all that fun stuff.